Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlock. Coming up, what does the exit of Tim Lewis from Arsenal mean for all the Premier League dynamics? Who's bought shares in Tottenham? Why is Felipe Massa suing Formula One and Bernie Ecclestone? What's happening with the 64-team World Cup? Are we going to see the return of Afghanistan's women's team? And a special guest from the world of rugby league. But we're beginning with a big FIFA story to discuss with Tariq Panja from the New York Times, Martyn Ziegler from the Times, and myself, Rob Harris from Sky News. And this has been rumbling for a very long time. Israel's fate in international football and whether action is going to be taken.
Yeah, I mean, a very long time, probably like 20 years more. But actually, obviously, things have come to a head in the recent months and years with what's been happening in Gaza. And then the pressure now is building to such a situation where it looks very likely that UEFA is going to call an emergency meeting of its executive committee, and there what I understand to be a large majority will vote in favour of Israel being suspended from European competition.
Where does this come from now? Obviously, this conflict has been going on for a very long time now. The number of deaths have been reported. The images have been beamed around the world. Israel's actions have been, in Gaza, we've been there to see. What we've had recently, we've had European nations, including France and the United Kingdom, recently recognizing the Palestinian state. But from a football point of view, guys, we were at congresses with FIFA in Bangkok, where the issue was raised nearly 18 months ago. We've been to Asuncion in Paraguay for the next FIFA Congress. So on the FIFA side, nothing happened. Norway, who are in the same World Cup group as Israel and Italy, who are among the countries now looking to apparently ban Israel. Norway, before the World Cup started, from my understanding, I tried to talk to the other teams in their group to come with a unified position, say maybe we don't want to play Israel right now, and they got a short shrift. What has happened in the last 2 months that has led to this? And it seems a top-down UEFA decision. What's happened, guys?
Well, you mention recognition of Palestinian statehood by the likes of France and the UK, and I often got the sense of when there was almost political cover, football might start to make moves towards considering a ban. But certainly, I was hearing over last week that at the high levels at UEFA, they do find that there can be an appearance of double standard of maintaining the ban on Russia, but not banning Israel. Notably, as now a UN Commission of Inquiry has said that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. That's denied by Israel, and it's not a definitive conclusion.
Right, and that's also really interesting with the Russia comparison. We're into details here and accuracy, at least here when we're speaking. And the Russia comparison, you've got to scrutinize it a bit. Russia technically are not banned by FIFA and UEFA. Alexei Sorokin, for example, is on the FIFA Council. Russia Russia has other representatives at UEFA and FIFA. It's the Russian teams that were banned following the invasion of Ukraine. And why was that in May 2022? It's because about half a dozen nations, Poland, Sweden, others who would have played Russia, said, we are not going to play them. So it was almost a force majeure situation. Either UEFA's competitions collapse without all of these teams and all of these clubs, or you ban Russia from national team football. This is what's happened. But with Israel, we haven't seen anyone come on the record to say we are not going to play. So what's happened here?
And with Russia, if you go back on the Court of Arbitration for Sport verdict as well from Russia's appeal, it established that there was no neutral European territory that was willing to host Russia's matches as well.
Right. And Israel, to be clear, have been playing games in Hungary and Romania as national teams throughout the tournament. However, there have been issues. Remember, Belgium had to cancel a game because they couldn't host it, and they gave up a game against Israel. It may have been in the Nations League about a year ago. Italy have had to move the matches they had to Udine, still in Italy, but into another region. And look, the other issue some people have raised here is Israel and Italy are pretty close in the qualifying groups. While Norway were pretty strident and strong, wanting UEFA to take decisive action, wanting the other teams in their group, including Italy, to do something before the group stage started. Italy didn't want to do that. They didn't find an issue a few months ago when qualification started, but they are really now apparently keen on this. So, that's something for them to clear up. Again, no one has come on the record to say why any of this is happening. So we'll have to clear it up. And then, of course, the other big international incident has been the Israeli missile attack on the Hamas delegation in Qatar. Why is that interesting? And now talking to people within football, they'll say, well, Qatar have a very big influence on UEFA through Nasser Al-Khalifi, the Qatari head of PSG and beIN Sport, member of the UEFA Council, and the president of the European Club Association. The Qataris say it's absolutely nothing to do with us and are furious that their name is being used here. But that, again, is part of the speculation. And again, I raise this because no one up to now has been willing to say anything on the record why we are at this critical juncture.
I think the UN Commission of Inquiry, which sort of stated the fact that, in their opinion, the genocide is being carried out, I think that has been really important for the people who are pushing this, particularly with the new UEFA, this moves to suspend Israel. Somebody said to me, if a country is deemed to be taking part in genocide, you really want to go and play their national team and in effect sort of say that, that's okay. We don't want to do that. Nobody wants to do that. I know what you're saying about Italy being the same group. I think it's much broader than that across Europe. And I mean, the most interesting thing for me in all this is FIFA, because Gianni Infantino obviously close relationship with Donald Trump. Trump, very, very supportive of Israel and would absolutely hate anything that would be seen by FIFA to be blocking Israel or suspending them. So this could actually work out. If UEFA suspend them, FIFA don't have to, and yet they won't be able to play in the World Cup almost certainly.
UEFA do organise World Cup qualifiers in Europe.
Yes, they do. So although it's a FIFA competition, UEFA provides the staff, for example, and runs it. So if they suspend Israel, I know it's unprecedented, but I think that can't happen. And certainly the other the other countries involved could say, look, hang on a minute, if Israel had been suspended by UEFA, then we shouldn't play them. Similarly, like we couldn't play Russia. But Rob, you actually contacted the State Department, didn't you?
I did. I was not expecting a reply back. I'd been working on this through the week, hearing of those growing calls to ban Israel, the growing sense of feeling within UEFA that Israel should be suspended. And then from the Trump administration, from the State Department, they did get back to me saying, we will absolutely work to fully stop any effort to attempt to ban Israel's national soccer team from the World Cup. Of course, the World Cup next year, mostly being hosted in the United States. Not completely unexpected that the Trump administration would back Israel, given the close relationship between Donald Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's where it puts Gianni Infantino all this, where he's balancing multiple sides, obviously very close to Donald Trump, repeatedly in the Oval Office, but then an unexpected statement a couple of weeks ago when Israel launched those attacks on Hamas in Qatar. And Gianni Infantino posted, my thoughts and sympathies are with Qatar and the innocent people of Qatar who have been impacted by today's events in Doha. And he went on to talk about Qatar being a nation building bridges in a troubled world. Today was backing Qatar without directly referencing Israel. On the other hand, he's close to Trump. He's in New York this week, meetings at Trump Tower, of course, where FIFA's office is now. And he was receiving an award as well. There's the Atlantic Council. Emmanuel Macron was there, and he referenced in a speech his concerns for Gaza without actually making any point about football's role in this potentially. Although one thing I thought was striking, where he talked about there being 80 conflicts in the world. I wonder if that was pointing to the fact that actually people are telling us to ban countries. There are many countries that could be banned.
Yeah, that's dancing on the head of the pin there for him, as like you described there. But yeah, I mean, with Qatar, of course, for both Donald Trump and Gianni Infantino, that's a special case, isn't it? So obviously, Gianni Infantino grew very close to the Emir of Qatar, was got a home there over in Qatar during the World Cup, and has been close to that country. Donald Trump, of course, is close to the Qataris in a different way. There's the enormous United States air base there, the largest air base it has in the Middle East. And of course, there was the controversy about the gift of the Boeing 747 from the Qataris to Donald Trump earlier in the year, which will be retrofitted to be an Air Force One. So you have these issues. And Martyn was saying, like, there's a lot of strength of feeling now in Europe. And one of the countries, look, Spain is an interesting one here. The Prime Minister there, Pedro Sanchez, he's been extremely vocal in accusing Benjamin Netanyahu's government of, what is it saying, exterminating a defenseless people by bombing hospitals, killing, his quote, innocent boys and girls with hunger, calling them to stop the massacre. Now, look, this is a guy who's put his name to these quotes. This is why I'm finding the football stuff a little bit curious this week. Like, there's so much strength of feeling. The whole exco seems to be ready to go to ban Israel, but it's all being done behind closed doors. The Spanish Prime Minister has been very clear here. What I find with football often is, like, all of these messages somehow are coming out. No one is putting their name to this stuff if they're so furious about this. When are we going to hear from them?
Well, UEFA General Secretaries were meeting in Spain in Marbella this week.
Yeah, and I heard it didn't come up. So this is a really good point. So 55 general secretaries of UEFA meeting in Marbella. The stories that you guys have done this week on this very subject is apparently the talk of the town. But when you go on the agenda and talk to people who are there, it didn't come up. And neither did it come up apparently in Tirana last week when the UEFA Exco actually met. So it is curious to me how there is such a strong sense of feeling when you hear words like this from the Spanish Prime Minister. I'll read a bit more of his quotes. Protecting your country and your society is one thing, but bombing hospitals and killing innocent boys and girls with hunger is another thing, says Pedro Sanchez. You don't hear this from the Spanish FA. So when are we going to hear from people if they're that upset about this?
Well, I think it's probably kind of understandable that they don't want to say anything at the moment until things are a bit clearer around the decision. I think that's sort of fairly normal.
But what do you mean, though? In the
I
sense,
mean,
you said
people
that
have
genocide is one step too far using the language. You said, the language.
No, I think people think
hearing...
people will think. I think people think it's counterproductive to say anything at the moment, and that those people who want to have a suspension think it's better not saying anything at the moment in order to secure that. I think more interesting than the fact perhaps that no one's come out to oppose the suspension apart from the Israelis. You could say that as well.
So can I ask you a question? Can I ask you both a question as well? Like, why is this story come out then? Like, what's the point of this story to come out? It's just really intriguing because this story, some people want the story out there. They could be this meeting. Why? Because as you said, there's no point saying anything until something is done. When they do it, then, as you said, they might speak. So why are we at this point where people want this out now? Is it to get a meeting organised? Is it to focus the minds?
Well, an earlier version of this that wasn't exactly correct came from Israeli media. And I had sensed over the weekend that they were sensing within the Israeli FA that the situation had escalated and they were more braced to fight off these attempts to be banned from football.
No, I think you're right there, Rob. Certainly, the Israeli FA have been sort of casting around, from what I understand. I think it's helpful actually for people who want the suspension for this to be actually then emerge in the public domain. It makes it easier now, probably, to organise this emergency meeting. I think the fact that how serious this is can be illustrated by the fact that Netanyahu himself from what I understand, well, actually, not from what I understand, the Israeli Culture and Sports Ministry have put out a statement saying he's been working behind the scenes himself, personally, to try and stop this happening. So, this is how serious they're taking it.
It would be one of the most notable acts against Israel by Europe as a collective, certainly in terms of any sort of cultural boycott. While some countries have limited arms sales, it's only been partial, you might say performative by certain countries. So banning Israel from playing in European competitions would be quite a landmark decision. There are currently some countries trying to get Israel thrown out of the Eurovision Song Contest, in part using parts of the regulation citing potential government interference in the entry. So it would be interesting to see which part of the statutes are used, unless it's a sort of force majeure type
That's a really good
justification.
point. Yeah, exactly. Like where we said the Russia situation is a force majeure situation, i.e., if we don't kick this country and its clubs and teams out, you're going to have a situation where we lose a lot of participants. So it's the least worst situation. So here, how are you going to do it? And the Eurovision Song Contest is also interesting because I think Spain and the Republic of Ireland have said they'll consider having no participants should an Israeli entry be there. So on a cultural level, and also it is a big deal, isn't it? If you're not in football, the UN group of those UN rapporteurs, those independent experts who wrote letters to FIFA and UEFA about this, did cite the platform that football and football in particular, offers. Think about any other cultural pursuit in the world that has as many eyeballs as football. It's very hard to think of one, and it is a political platform if you want to use it that way. And here we are. So yeah, it's a huge deal.
Well, earlier in the week, I spoke to the UN Special Rapporteur for Cultural Rights, Alexandra Zanthaki. Now, special rapporteurs aren't UN officials, they are external advisors, effectively. And I suppose one way of putting it is it wasn't a rant. She's against Israeli teams participating in sport, but not against individuals. So she's fine with Israeli athletes competing as neutrals at the Olympics. And, she did say it's the overwhelming majority who'd be impacted. I'm sorry, but it's the situation that your state is involved with. And she said that she believed a line had been crossed when there are claims of genocide and believing it can't be business as usual in terms of sport. Now, one of the factors that could come into play is security considerations. So I was in Birmingham earlier this week with Ayub Khan. He's the independent MP representing the area where Aston Villa are. And, he's saying that Aston Villa should boycott their Europa League match against Maccabi Tel Aviv, which is in early November. He's pointing to talks that are underway about security concerns around this fixture. So if there are visiting Israeli fans, what happens in taxis, what happens in the city? There is a sense there could be demonstrations, both pro-Palestinian, pro-Israeli. Do you have to find ways, if the game does go ahead, of funneling fans in a particular way, but certainly recognising that there's a policing challenge and safety issue with that match going ahead. Now, he is an MP who's known for his anti-Israeli views in particular.
Yeah, and the point of the club football is a pointed one. It's not. I think a lot of clubs. We saw the issue last year when was it the same team traveled to the Netherlands to play a game in Amsterdam, and there was a lot of violence. I think the media struggled with how to report that as well at the time. And now
there were convictions of some in Amsterdam for attacks on Israeli fans, condemned for anti-Semitism. There were Israeli fans filmed with anti-Arab chants as well.
Yeah, there was yeah, exactly. There was arrests and violence, etc. from both sides. Football fans was very ugly. Then there was the comments from the Amsterdam mayor. Then she had to offer new comments in the days afterwards, and it was a very ugly week, both in European football and just in Europe generally from that. And there are clubs in the Europa League who have been drawn with Maccabi Tel Aviv who have expressed concerns about hosting the team. So if you're Look, there's a sense we're talking about this UEFA ban, and to be clear, if there is one, it would include the clubs as well. It's not just related to the national team. And with some of these opponents of Maccabi Tel Aviv in the Europa League, a few of them were probably hoping that that does happen because of the challenges the situation poses.
Yeah, for sure. I think we talked about on the pod a few weeks ago that several teams had actually approached UEFA before the draw for the Europa League to sound out if there's any way, any process by which they could request not to be drawn against Maccabi Tel Aviv, and we're told that there is no such process in the draw. And they probably just hoped they were going to avoid them by the luck of the draw. But I think there's already been protests this season. PAOK played them this week. There were some protests there, and as Rob says, almost certainly going to be the protest in Birmingham if that goes ahead, which I think probably now looks less likely rather than more.
One thing we've not discussed is the situation in Gaza, and there have been Palestinian footballers and many athletes who've been killed in the war, also sports facilities that have been attacked and destroyed, something that was certainly raised this week by the Football Association and Olympic Committee representing Palestine. And talking about something that has been, well, to some maybe kicked into the long grass because we've been waiting for an outcome on this, that it was a year ago that FIFA launched an investigation into allegations of discrimination that were raised by the Palestinian Football Association against the Israeli FA. Another investigation is into whether teams from Israeli settlements in the West Bank playing in Israeli competitions breaches the FIFA regulations because the territory is considered by many around the world to be Palestinian territory that those Israeli teams are playing in.
Yeah, I think that was that sort of legality issue. Was I think the Palestinian FA were hoping that would prove something that they could use for their own arguments, but it's moved on from that, hasn't it? This is very much a sort of issue about should they be suspended for what's happening in Gaza rather than any sort of breach of the rules, I think. And I'm quite surprised it actually got to this stage because there've been so many times when we've seen these attempts to football's authorities and they've always managed to deflect or delay. So it just seems that UEFA have now decided that they want to do something.
Well, maybe many are still waiting for an intervention from Donald Trump, having said, of course, he would end the Israel-Gaza war and the Russia-Ukraine war.
Everyone's going to be at the World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone will be at the World Cup, he said. And speaking of something that we've been waiting a long time for, Martyn, you wrote about this. Jack Warner, the former FIFA vice president, the CONCACAF president, the head of the Trinidad Tobago Festival, Bête Noire of the world of football. He was named in the US indictment in 2015 that alleged a bunch of these people were, for want of a better word, absolutely bent, has been fighting extradition from Trinidad to the United States to face justice for now 10 years, and he's got away with it. Is that right?
Well, yes, he's not going to be extradited. The Trinidad High Court has said that there's no formal extradition agreement with the US, so he doesn't have to go. He's now 82. We've probably written about huge amounts about all the sort of things he got up to. I suppose most significantly, according to the US indictment, he was paid $5 million allegedly to vote for Russia to host 2018 World Cup. And also $1.5 million by Qatar's Mohammed bin Haman. And at least half of that was before the World Cup vote, which gave 2022 to Qatar. So lots of allegations against him. But he did. So I emailed him to see his response to the High Court victory, and he replied, "Yeah, I'd feel relieved and pleased, but you guys and the media have contributed to this in no small measure. But as we say in my country, God do sleep," which means, do you know what that means?
I've no idea. Well, God's done him a favour, maybe.
It means
But
God will not allow injustice to go unpunished.
well, the other people who did him a massive favour, who you didn't mention, is South Africa as well. Of course, there was that $10 million diaspora payment as well when South Africa were bidding for the World Cup. That also ended up allegedly with Jack Warner, as did this incredible situation of the FIFA Centre of Excellence. So FIFA spent double-digit millions building a excellence centre or a great sports facility there, and he somehow put it in his own name. And I don't think they've been able to get it back, CONCACAF or FIFA. I think Jack Warner still owns that. There was a João Havelange Centre of Excellence and a Sepp Blatter Hall there where you can arrange weddings or other parties there, which he is still in possession of. So look, if he's escaped extradition, well done to his lawyers. But the allegations are many and extremely colourful. So he's someone we're not going to forget in a hurry.
Yeah, the man who famously complained about the standard of handbag from the England World Cup bid for 2018 as a gift.
Indeed. In fact, if you want to, anyone has a spare half an hour, Google the full report by Michael Garcia into World Cup bidding, the US lawyer, and then read the bits about the lengths that the English 2018 bid team went to try and woo him, and hilarious email exchanges when he's like demanding his what he called, I think somebody he viewed as his adopted son, that he was getting him jobs at English football clubs, and he was very unhappy every time the job he was hoping for didn't materialise or was delayed. I mean, it's incredible the lengths he went to just to push all these bid committees to do him favours.
Another chapter closes in that FIFA scandal that erupted in 2015. Well, in the world of the Premier League, it's been the first meeting of the season of all the club owners and chief executives, well, those who turn up. And it's not just the playing squads that have had a bit of change over the summer, so the lineups of some of the Premier League teams as well at these meetings.
Yeah, the old some of the old big beasts of the Premier League no longer there. So Daniel Levy, been 25 years at Spurs, he wasn't there. He was removed. Karen Brady, Baroness Brady, the West Ham vice chairwoman, she hasn't been removed, but she wasn't there either. And Tim Lewis, perhaps most recently and most interestingly, has effectively been fired by Arsenal. He was the executive vice chairman there, basically the chief executive, the guy who ran the club, did everything, very important and sort of quite loud voice in Premier League meetings, always stated his mind and was very hot on financial regulation, very sort of at odds with Manchester City, I think, over lots of things. And yeah, he's gone.
He's very strong, of course, on the PSR regulations and the financing, kind of aligned with the likes of Liverpool, Manchester United, and others who wanted strict regulations because the fear of state-owned teams. But Tim Lewis is interesting. He's only been there 5 years, really. I mean, another guy who left recently, Daniel Levy, obviously had been there since 2001 and a very, very familiar face. But Tim Lewis, I think, came in to steady the ship at Arsenal right in the middle of COVID and then stayed for 5 years. And as you said, very sharp elbows, very sharp tongue as well, and was known to be vocal at those meetings that you described. He also was really close to Stan Kroenke, the Arsenal owner. In fact, the story goes when Kroenke bought his shares initially, they were from ITV, the UK TV channel, for about 45 million. That's how he got involved with Arsenal. And in the cab with him, in the black cab, on his way to speak to ITV to buy the shares, was Tim Lewis, who's a lawyer at Clifford Chance. So this is a man very allied to the sort of patriarch of the Kroenke family. I say it that way because in recent years, Stan Kroenke's son, Josh Kroenke, has become a lot more involved with Arsenal, a lot more involved with running the operation, and almost like in a succession type situation, as well as this situation with just getting rid of Tim Lewis. Maybe there's also this issue of Josh Kroenke wanting a greater say and having his people in and running Arsenal the way he wants. We've seen with at Spurs when Daniel Levy left, the children of Joe Lewis, who was for many years the majority owner of Tottenham, and then it moved into a trust following a legal case in the US where he was accused of insider trading. His family, his daughter Vivian and her brother, they have now said that want to take more control of Tottenham. So we're almost seeing the baton changing at these two North London clubs as well.
And a stake in Spurs has been sold to the son of Lord Ashcroft, a name that might not be familiar to some global listeners, but certainly a wealthy man, been involved in Conservative Party politics in the UK.
Yeah, was the chairman of the Conservative Party, often their biggest donor for many years. Also, he was the majority owner of Watford for a very long time. And here we have his son buying a stake in Spurs. With Watford as well, there was a story, I want to say, in 2010, 2011, when the club was going through financial crisis so deep that its future was in doubt. There was always this kind of story that Lord Ashcroft would be the man to bail them out. And I guess, his son is got different ideas and is a big Spurs fan, possibly.
It's interesting to see how these changes will affect the standings of those two North London clubs, for sure, within the game. I mean, I think the Spurs have been sort of dropping back in terms of, their wage bill, for example. Maybe it's the stadium, the cost of that, and maybe they think they need to compete more. Arsenal, I think they've built themselves back up again. Maybe Josh Kroenke thinks now's the time to take the reins a bit more closely. Also, the Kroenkes have got, this is an interesting thing, they've got big interest now in Abu Dhabi, because the Denver Nuggets, the NBA team they own, that they've played there within the last year. And Josh Kroenke was saying, from a business standpoint, the brand awareness is incredible you can build coming here. So it probably doesn't help if he's got Tim Lewis being very, very anti-Manchester City, owned by Abu Dhabi, if he's trying to sort of build relationships there. So that might have been a factor in it, as well as everything else.
The fact you've raised that, Martyn, does go to the heart of a lot of people's concerns when you have, say, state-owned teams, that the power that they can bring to bear in other industries and other businesses, that you kind of, as an owner of a rival team, you're wary about how this affects your business interests, broadly speaking. It's not like football team owners thinking about how I'm going to challenge this club on a football level in this industry. But oh God, I've got, I don't know, several billion invested that is potentially at risk should I take on the issue of a state-owned team because of other factors. And this is something that I guess the people who were waving through state ownership didn't think about when all of this was allowed to happen, and it still is.
And now they attempt to bring in various iterations of financial fair play, but now we have the squad cost rules that are attempting to be introduced for next season, but they're all still wrangling over it, the clubs.
Yeah, UEFA have these. You can only spend 70% of your revenue on football costs, which is like wages, transfer fees, agents' fees. And Chelsea and Aston Villa both fell foul of those. So the idea is you'd have a similar thing in the Premier League, but it would be 85% a bit easier to get through. But people, the clubs, a bit wary of this if they're not in Europe, and also there's no sort of, they don't know, there hasn't been explained to them what will happen. Say you breach it by £1 million, what's a sanction for that? If you breach it by 5 million, when do you start getting points deductions or transfer bans? There's been no tariff. So yeah, I think there will be a decision or a vote. If there is one, it'll be in November, but I don't think there's any guarantee it's going to happen.
That's the word of the Premier League meeting. A couple of bits of FIFA news that has been developing in the last week. Now, we've talked about this quite a bit in the past, something to get into again more in depth, but this push for a 64-team World Cup in 2030. It's been advanced by CONMEBOL, the South American Confederation, and they did it again during meetings in New York with Gianni Infantino. Does it mean it's more realistic, the fact that FIFA haven't managed to completely quash this idea?
I think it's very unrealistic still. I think it's more, what's interesting is the suggestion that this wouldn't have been raised without Infantino being happy for it to be so. I'm not sure if there's any truth in that or not, but I think the fact it's still being discussed when you've got CONCACAF, Victor Montagliani, the president there, said he's against it. Alexander Sheffrin at UEFA said it's a bad idea. I think the Asian Football Confederation's against it. So why they keep banging on about it? It's compromised. They want to get something agreed. More matches at the 2030 World Cup.
Look, if you go back, you got to look at it from a South American point of view as well. So the South America were going to bid for the 2030 World Cup, probably going to lose, but they were going to bid for it, and it was going to be a competition, if you remember, between 4 or 5 South American countries, and then it was going to be Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, and then the rug was suddenly pulled from under everyone. Announcement made that this innovative, if you want, or weird decision to take the World Cup to Spain, Morocco, and Portugal, but the first 3 matches were going to be played in Uruguay, Argentina, and for some reason, Paraguay, which just happens to be where the South American football president Alejandro Dominguez is from. Now, from a South American point of view, there was a lot of anger here because, one, Paraguay, which was, yes, it's the home of CONMEBOL, but the reason the 2030 World Cup was even talked about in South America is because the first World Cup was hosted in Uruguay. It's a centennial since then, and Argentina were the opponents in the final. But by giving Paraguay a game as well, they've given Paraguay a free slot to the World Cup finals themselves. Now, that annoyed a lot of countries in South America, and here we have this idea of expansion, all of these things, perhaps to assuage some of other nations over there. And in terms of Infantino, I think he knows it's not really going to happen. But he's had the Paraguayan president in his office. Why not just nod along and say, let's do it?
Well, we'll see how that one does develop. So much to discuss about the formats of the World Cups and maintaining interest in it. Something else FIFA has been doing is try to revive the Afghanistan women's team. Ever since the return to power of the Taliban in 2021, there's been, first of all, the attempt to get the Afghan female players to safety away from the country, and then moves very much to try to ensure they can play again. It's now more than 5 years since they've had a fixture. They've been having talent ID camps around the world. I went to one that was held in England a few weeks ago, seeing some of the players, those who've gained refuge here in England, now trying to just get back playing again. And we now have an announcement of the fixtures for this team, which won't be known as the Afghanistan national team. It will be called the refugee team.
Interesting that they haven't taken a tougher line on Afghanistan FA, because with a FIFA statute saying that you must have a women's team.
That's a really good point. Yeah. They've done this without them, and probably, these, as Rob said, this is diaspora Afghan women, often refugees, split across the world, places like Australia and Europe, even in the United States, and building a team for this refugee group. Now, could it be a situation that once this gets going, they might have to ban Afghanistan for not allowing this to happen? I mean, that's a good test of the Gianni Infantino FIFA regime, isn't it, really? Because those are the rules, and they haven't done it.
They will be playing at the end of October in Dubai against Chad, Libya, and the United Arab Emirates. But the players were quite open when I was talking to them around FIFA officials that they don't want this just to be a one-off. They want to keep it going into the future as well, to stay as a team. They don't want to play under the Taliban flag. They want to be under the previous main Afghanistan flag. And, they say they aren't in any way representing the current Afghanistan.
Yeah. That is the situation they're in. If you think about the plight of Afghan women, it is maybe but they'll be used to bring to light situations that are ongoing in Afghanistan. The thing I was wondering though is there are Afghan refugees in the US now with the US policy, immigration policy, etc. I know some people are fearful that should these players go and play in this tournament, will they be allowed to come back? given the current issues within the United States with immigration. So we're focusing a lot on the Afghan regime, but the world is in a very, very complicated place, and there are concerns for those Afghan refugees in the US. Should they go and join up with their team, will they be able to come home?
Well, FIFA doing more than the world of cricket. Concerns earlier in the year that about why Afghanistan's men were able to continue competing in the Champions Trophy. Well, there is still no cricket team for the Afghan women, and the ICC have been making moves in terms of trying to facilitate a return somehow, but I don't think there's been any progress.
No, it's a good point, Rob. Yeah, it is. At least there is efforts being made to try and help create this Afghan women's team, even if it is a refugees team. So there is certainly something to be applauded there.
Well, there will be a group of Afghan women who are in exile who will be touring India to play cricket in October. Well, what about the world of motorsport? Just to tee up something that is coming up, Felipe Massa suing Formula One and Bernie Ecclestone over a crash many years ago.
Yeah, 2008 Crashgate. Nelson Piquet Jr. crashes his car deliberately, and his teammate Fernando Alonso wins the race. Felipe Massa had been leading it until the safety car came up, and then he had a sort of bungled pit stop, ended up being out of the points and lost the World Drivers' Championship by 1 point. Now, Nelson Piquet Jr. a year later blew the whistle on this, but Bernie Ecclestone, now 94, did an interview a couple of years ago where he said, according to the interview anyway, he said, Max Mosley and I, the FIA president, were told about this after the race, but we didn't want a huge scandal, so we decided not to investigate because we might probably have had to annul the race. Having seen that, Felipe Massa or his lawyers think, hang on a minute, what? Cover up, blah, 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 let's sue him for £60 million.
You see why people don't want to go on the record sometimes. Think about our earlier discussion, but it's incredible, isn't it? The idea that you lose the main championship of the sport in circumstances like this, and years later you're gonna in court. You can't give him that moment back as well. You've got to be so sick if you've done whatever sport you're playing an entire season, and someone has like robbed you of the championship like this, and then it comes out in the wash. Yeah, the fix was in.
And the dangers about ordering someone to crash as well.
Yeah. I mean, just to very quickly mention, I did speak to Bernie Ecclestone this week, and he's 94, bright as a button still, and he said, look, the truth is there wasn't enough evidence to investigate, and it wasn't until Nelson Piquet Jr. had been fired by Renault and he came and spilled the beans that there was. So he says the interview he gave was to a German guy who didn't speak very good English. That's what he's saying now.
What's weird is for listeners, the guy who had the crash, he's admitted doing it. It's funny that they didn't go to court after he said, I was ordered to crash into the wall, and only waited for Ecclestone and the late, of course, Max Mosley passed away now years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
For this to come to court.
It's strange. And the other funny thing about it is that the people from Renault who did it, who organised it all, Flavio Briatore is now back running the Alpine Formula One team, larger than life Italian, and Pat Simmons, who was the chief engineer, I think, for Renault, they both served a few years suspensions, and then he was back actually working for Formula One management and a couple of other teams. So, and the final one actually, there was a witness X who actually the year after, when the FIA did investigate, a guy called who was known as Witness X. Max Mosley and the FIA wouldn't identify him, but he was later named as the person who, from Renault, who gave the killer information. And it turned out he was Alan Permain, British race engineer, and he said he'd objected to this plan and he told the FIA what had happened and confirmed it all. He's now been appointed by Red Bull to succeed Christian Horner as team principal. So well done, Alan.
And this in a week when we discovered about Christian Horner's payout from Red Bull, reportedly €60 million or more than that as well.
Remarkable. What a sum to be kicked off. 60 million.
So much money in that sport, but a sport that's not got anything like that wealth. A sport we don't mention that often. Rugby League, and we're reaching the climax in England of the Super League season with the playoffs. And fortunately, we have some coaching insights.
Yeah, it's great. We've got Matty Peet, head coach of Wigan Warriors. Very successful couple of years he's had. They're in the Super League playoffs again, looking to win the whole thing. And Matty's an interesting guy because never played professional rugby league, but has achieved great success. It's great to have you with us, Matty.
To be here.
Can I ask about your sort of coaching journey? Because you weren't a fully professional rugby league player. Did they sort of accept you?
I'm very open and honest with the players that I could never do what they do, or what they put their bodies through, what they have to execute under pressure. I think it's helped me is I made a lot of mistakes away from the media, away from too much attention, being judged on results, and probably learned a lot along the way in terms of managing young men.
Particularly the media spotlight. How do you cope with it on a day-to-day basis?
You'll hear many people say it's more when it affects your family, and living in the town, it's constant, but it's a small price to pay.
So one interesting thing, Matt, is your sort of determination to learn from other sports. So quite recently you spent a fair bit of time, I think, is it with the New York Giants, the NFL side?
They were fantastic with us. Learned quite a bit there. But I think in general, stepping into other organisations, again, because I've had quite a long apprenticeship and I didn't have that playing pedigree to fall back on, I've had a lot of time to visit other organisations. And I think when you're an academy coach, people are more open with you because they don't see you as a threat. So I've, along the way, made it my business to seek mentors, to go and study. So yeah, I think seeking out people who know more than me, who've done more than me, and latching onto them and stealing from them is been a cheat code for me.
Was there one difference from the New York Giants, American sport, compared to the sort of things you'd found out in English sport? Was there a different culture, or was there any significant differences being in the US?
Because of the size of the organisation, I won't lie to make sweeping statements. It seemed very businesslike, a little bit transactional, yet less human interaction than what we are used to. Less camaraderie, but very intense around the learning, very intense around the information. The media was obviously a huge presence. I think there was 30-odd media on the day we was there. It was a big news day for them. It just dropped the quarterback. So the amount of media that were present on the training day, I think, was huge, something that we wouldn't be used to. And then the sheer size of the facility, the amount of rooms, the amount of equipment. They've got a playing squad of 60-odd people. So there was some organisational things there that we tapped into, just how they share and how they promote and encourage learning.
We've got a lot of sports leaders from across the world listening to this podcast. What's the sell for rugby league? We see obviously union with sevens in the Olympics. We've got the Women's Rugby Union World Cup at the moment. Is there something that you think is perhaps missed about rugby league?
I think the standout point of the game is it's the most action-packed, physically demanding team sport that there is. I don't think anyone would question that. I've got so many friends in rugby union, the NFL, as you mentioned, which are the closest in terms of physicality. But the amount of action that you get in a game of rugby league, the amount of ball movement, the physical demands put on the players in terms of running meters and physicality, and then being challenged to execute acrobatic skills and wonderful passes, in the 17.5 minute of a 12-kilometre running game is incomparable. And then away from the game, I feel like the connectivity between the players, the clubs, and the local communities and supporters. The access that our players grant to the fans is unbelievable. It's for a professional sport, because the money and the media attention. I think we're still very much normal working class lads, and our players carry themselves like that. But the way they play the game, they're certainly very special.
Does that bring them closer to the community as well, then, in the sense, because you said normal working class lads, that it's not millionaires all over the place. So in the towns these teams are in, are they part of the fabric of society?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, most of our players will live within a 5-mile radius, so that means they're at the school gates in the morning. A lot of them are from the local community, so they've got ties with the local community clubs, the schools themselves that they came through. The families are integrated, and the players are there, and always, after games, before games, the way the club's set up, the players hang around, spend time with supporters.
For mental well-being, the fact that there's this feeling of connection, the fans can encounter the players and maybe even have a bit of a conversation if they want.
I think it can be really good for the players to feel supported and connected, and understand that they stand for something bigger than themselves, and they generally can make a difference in the community. But that's when performances are going well and everyone's on board. And it also brings its challenges for our players, there's no doubt, because it can become a little bit of a bubble at times. And we have to educate on our players on how to deal with that.
And it's this psychological element as much as anything that you're imparting, the confidence and all the other bits.
Don't get me wrong, I can coach the X's and O's of the game, the fundamental skills. I've worked with developing players from, as I mentioned, for the last 20 odd years. So I can teach a player how to pass the ball better, how to tackle better. But a lot of that's just about repetition and understanding of fundamental techniques, which I think when you've come through coaching junior players, you tend to have a good grasp on anyway. But yeah, I think the way a coach supports the players, makes them feel safe and points them in a direction of becoming the best they can be. A lot of that's just about quality conversation, asking the right questions, and then being willing to hold the lads accountable to their own standards. Once you ask a player what they want to do with a career, and they tell you they want to win things and be world class and play international sport, then you've got a duty to hold them to an high standard, haven't you? Else either they didn't mean it, or you're not doing your job.
You played in Las Vegas, you're going to Paris next year. Some sports have struggled with this whole question about whether to take domestic fixtures overseas, but you've seen how it's helped rugby league.
Yeah, I've seen how it helped rugby league. It was unbelievable to see our sport on the big lights and on the billboards of Las Vegas. I never thought it would be possible. And it's certainly opened my eyes to what's possible if you have the ambition. And I think there's not just the getting the eyes in the media. I think it sets a tone for your players that anything is possible, and that they should never be satisfied with just doing what everyone else does. So multiple strands of advantages for me, but it suits my personality. I know that's what the club's been built on over the years, is hard working, humble ethos, but also a bit of swagger and a bit of luck to push the game forward, and not allowed to be told that something can't be done. So I'm really excited about what this club and this sport can do in the next 10 years.
Absolutely fascinating, Matty. Good luck for the climax of the season.
So it's been very nice to have a conversation. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So that is Matty Peet giving us a bit of insight into the world of Super League. What a varied pod.
It's been terrific, guys. Really good. Nice to come back after a couple of weeks off, and I'm sure it'll be as busy next week.
As ever, grateful for any of your feedback, rate and review us as well. It's much appreciated. But for now, thank you for listening. Goodbye.